Alrighty, welcome to Desert Island Picks, part of the Mojo Nation Play Creators Festival, where my guest today is Hasbro's Tanya Thompson. Tanya, hi.
Hello.
How are you?
I'm really, really good. How are you, Deej?
I'm incredibly well, actually. Thank you for asking. Yes, I'm pleased to see you. It seems like a lifetime. Well, it is. I mean, it's like 2 years. It's crazy. It's passed so quickly. You'll notice in my intro there that I didn't give your job title, Tanya. It's so long, and I wanted to do this in one take, and I thought if I tried your job title, I would certainly be here all afternoon. What's your job title? Give it to us.
So it is quite long. Senior Director of Inventor Relations and Innovation for Hasbro Gaming.
Oh, very good. Very good. There you go. Let's cut there. That's perfect. That's the whole interview. That's all we got time for. It's very good. Now, you've been at Hasbro for quite a while, no?
Well, since 2017. So, not as long as some people at Hasbro who've been there a very long time. But yeah, I started at the beginning. Well, actually, my first day at Hasbro was flying to Nuremberg for Nuremberg Toy Fair. So it had been in January of 2017. Yeah.
Wow, that's a baptism of fire, isn't it? Straight into that. Had you ever been anything that scale before?
Yeah, so thankfully doing inventor relations for the other companies I worked for previously, Nuremberg was quite familiar, but doing it for Hasbro was very different. But thankfully at the time I was taking over for Dougal Grimes, so we just did the show together, which was, phenomenally fun.
Excellent. And that's an interesting point, because I suppose I should back up and ask how you got into the industry, because you were in toys before you were at Hasbro. So how is it that you got to be working in toys and games?
Yeah, it's a very interesting journey in, because I certainly didn't take a typical route of heading into the industry after college kind of thing. So I actually super interested in mathematics, got a mathematics degree, then decided to be a teacher. My dad was a high school math teacher. For my early teenagedom, I tried to avoid anything that my parents did, but then realized I really did love it. So I went into teaching first, and was really trying to figure out ways to inspire my students in mathematics, this subject that I absolutely adored, which is a hard thing to do when a lot of kids have phobias and whatnot for that subject. So anyway, I started doing something called Snap Math Fairs out of a different province, because I'm in Canada, but I'd heard about it through some of the work that I was doing with other mathematicians out of the University of Waterloo. So I heard about this thing called Snap Math Fair. I contacted them. I started doing them in the school that I was at. It was phenomenally successful. Through that, I met Bill Ritchie, who is the CEO of Think Fun, which is the first company I worked for. And I started doing the Snap Math Fair organization asked me to start teaching teachers and if I would launch it in Ontario and run a conference for teachers. And one of my first speakers was Bill Ritchie through a mutual friend. I'll never forget receiving his email in the library and hopping around the library going, oh my God, I just got an email from Bill Ritchie, because I used games and puzzles in my classroom extensively. And so to connect with someone who was behind the product that I love was amazing. So anyway, I eventually went to work for Think Fun, took the big leap, stepped outside my comfort zone, left a very comfy job in Canada. Teaching is very revered and it's a fantastic job. Left that to explore what I could do in the toy and game industry. So that was my first job, was kind of director of education for Think Fun, but then a couple of years later moved into inventor relations. So
see, it does seem to me that your insight into that must be quite interesting, because I think you're right. I think mathematics, you said phobic there, it's an interesting word. I think that could be one of the driest subjects in the world if you have the wrong teacher. It's just, you say, I'm interested in maths, you're like, oh geez, I got to go, I got things on. But other people make that subject come alive. And as you and I have discussed, I think before, it leads to conversations about people like Martin Gardner and these extraordinary mathematical minds who make topological puzzles and the most extraordinary impossible bottles. And there's a whole world there that to me is fantastically interesting. But how you tap into that from maths is comparable, I suppose, to looking at toys and games. You've got to drive into it.
Well, maths, or mathematics, as we say here in North America.
Yes,
maths
I wasn't going to correct you.
You're right. It can be a very dry subject. But for me, I have like such a big passion for it. I wanted to like, how can I connect with students over that? And one of the ways, besides just teaching curriculum, was to introduce to them oddities and puzzles and games that use their brain in the same way, whether it's spatial awareness or critical thinking. But it was amazing because if I was teaching, for instance, a level that was like, let's say a really low level of mathematics to kids who are really struggling with the subject, and I put like this really hard puzzle in front of them and they would like solve it like that because their spatial thinking was incredible. And I would be like, oh my God, I was like, truly, there's so much more to analyze in a person rather than just book smarts, right? It's like how they think, how they use their hands. And so I was really interested in kind of touching all the different types of learners in different types of ways. And then they would gain confidence because I would be like praising them because I was truly impressed by what they just did. And then suddenly they were like, I think it'd been years since they'd ever, received any sort of compliments in a math class for their ability. And then it would like allow them, it was an entry for me to have them trust me in terms of how I was going to teach them. And so I had huge success using games and puzzles in my classroom so that I could learn things about my students that a math textbook would never teach me.
Yeah, and that's fascinating. The thing that really comes across as well, I wrote it down earlier, it's the one thing just before we started recording, we had a short conversation. You're so enthusiastic, you're so passionate about these things. You light up when you hear about an idea and you're just so excited. And I just think, gosh, this is what people talk about when inventor relations are talking about, you've got to be passionate about an idea. You really get a fire lit under you. And I don't see that in a lot of my old school teachers. They were not.
Yeah, well, absolutely. I was super passionate, and my philosophy when I was teaching, actually in life, is just to always go above and beyond and do as much as you can, not because somebody's telling you to, but because you just know in your heart that it's the right thing, but also you're really interested and curious yourself. And so that's what led me to Bill. So when I met Bill from Think Fun, he was just like, wow, I love how you think about teaching mathematics. I love how you love our product in there. And so that's kind of where it started. And then my curiosity around like, who are the creatives behind these amazing this amazing product that we were selling? And I was so curious about kind of the brains behind them and how they thought and the things that they produced. That Bill was had the company for 25 years and was mainly himself doing inventor relations. And he was like really interested in passing the baton. Right. And so in the company, they were like, we should get Tanya to do it. She's like super interested in the people, because I love people. So the people behind the product. And then that's where I started. I was so green at the beginning, like a business, Think Fun, like helped me come up to speed with business. And then I will never forget my first meeting with Mike Hurdle, who was then running what Inventor Relations was at Hasbro at the time. And we met at Toy Fair, and he kind of reached across the table and said like, hi, I'm Mike Hurdle from Hasbro. I do for Hasbro what you do for Think Fun, when I was in the Inventor Relations role at that time. And I was like, what? There's more people in the world that do this incredible thing. And he was like so instrumental for me, because he also gave me his card and said, if you have ever any questions, let me know. And there's people like that I've met along my career that have like kind of helped me or mentored me through learning new things. Mike was definitely one of those. And so I always had Hasbro on my sites, like, because I just met the people there and loved them. Yeah, brilliant. It's brilliant. Oh, I love that story. It's a great way to get into the industry, and it explains a lot about the way you look at games, because it's not, I think, you don't just sit there and pitch to you. It's not a sort of like
I rock up, I pitch, and you make your notes. It's not that way at all. You're much more involved and push and poke and pull and look and get into it. I was curious, and I'm reminded, by the way, I should have explained the format at the beginning. I'm not really interested in the format. We've ripped it off from the BBC. I'm sure we're going to get a tap on the shoulder. We'll have to bleep all this out. Sorry, Bill. It's a true story. But we are supposed to have cast you in this scenario on a desert island where you have a limited, finite number of toys and games to see you through until death or rescue. Not a bad name for a game. Death or rescue. Let's write that down.
Write that down. Yeah.
Maybe not for Hasbro, but it's a good idea. So looking back at your childhood, if I were to say to you, Tanya, which toy or game would you choose from childhood that you would be happy to have on a desert island for the rest of your life?
Yeah. So we definitely played games as a family, and then also some other families that we would often hang out with. We would play games with them. So, but I'm thinking of a desert island, and if I'm there on my own, then I definitely have different games now that I know but didn't know in my childhood. So if I'm just strictly going by my childhood, the toy that I absolutely remember, maybe for the wrong reasons, but is Baby Alive. So Baby Alive was a toy that I absolutely was one of those things I really wanted at Christmas. My mom was an OB-er, so I grew up with her in restaurants taking babies so other families could enjoy their meal, but they knew her because they knew her as a nurse in the hospital. And so I also got that baby crazy, just wanted babies. And so I really wanted this Baby Alive because it was the most lifelike doll that I could have closest to a baby.
And this is the doll. Now, there have been a couple of different versions, I think, some of which are Hasbro's, but would this have been earlier?
It is a Hasbro brand.
It's Hasbro. And it's a baby that eats like a formula.
Yeah. She now does a lot of things. She eats noodles. She eats it's amazing what innovation the brand has. But back then, from my childhood, it was you got little packets that you would mix up with water that would look like baby food, and then you got to feed them with your little spoon, and their mouth would move, and they would swallow the food. And then the best part as a kid is they'd poop it out, so you got to change diapers.
Well, interesting how you define best. That sounds hellacious to me personally. But, so yeah, you would feed it, and it would eat and poo. Yes. And who wouldn't be looking for that as a child? I suppose you would be into that. But that was the toy. And you had one. Did you have one in the end?
Well, actually, so one Christmas, it's a funny story. I did get a Baby Alive. I was so excited. And so I prepared the food and I fed her, but for whatever reason, the diapers didn't work, kind of like a real baby, didn't contain everything. So it was a huge mess. And my mom was like, I am not having this messy baby doll in my house. So she returned it. And I never really got to actually have it. And then I think I was thinking about this, and I was like, now, so what I got in replace, because this was my big Christmas gift, right? So I got to actually choose something else, but it was clear I was not going to be able to keep the baby alive. So I don't know if I'll have to ask my mom. I'm not sure if I requested it or if she just went out and replaced it with something else. I kind of feel like I probably requested it, which probably tells a little bit more than whatever about me. But anyway, the replacement was something called Little Professor. I actually have one on my desk. I'll show you. It's super old. It looks like this. Little Professor. It has the old red LCD screen. I don't think I have batteries in here. So anyway,
Texas Instruments. It's a posh calculator, right?
Yeah. So, and it would give you math questions that you could answer. And I love this thing. So, it's funny that back then, and then I became a math nerd. But yeah, that is that Little Professor. I actually used it because I obviously still have it. So I gave it to my kids when they were little, even though it was so outdated at that point. But with the LCD kind of, I don't know what kind of screen that is, but with the red numbers. But anyway, they loved it too. My one son is like, that's what made me really fast in math, was the little professor. So.
Wow, that's what a roller coaster. That is a great story. And I should say, you said about, you talked there and you specifically said you didn't think you would be able to keep the baby alive. I have to remind viewers, that is the name of the product, Baby Alive.
That's true. But if I'm on a desert island, yeah. Yeah, well, so mom took her away, but if I was on a desert island, then a toy from my childhood, I'd be like, oh, I'm an adult now, I'll get Baby Alive back, kind of.
Yeah,
thing.
you get it back. I quite like the idea as well that there is almost a closure to that, because it sounds like quite a traumatic thing to be given the toy of your dreams and then have Baby Alive social services. They come and
take her away.
You. You're not looking after it right. That sounds terrible. That's terrible. But a great answer. And you mentioned earlier that if you're alone on a desert island, this is one of the conceits that I like to throw in from time to time, because in the world of this island, in my head, it feels to me like it would be prudent to allow people to have somebody else on the island. So a bit like the most brilliant dinner guest of all time. If you were allowed a castaway, living or dead, is there a particular person that you would say, this is the person I would like to join me on the island? I could make fun with this person.
Yeah, like, it's a good question. I've actually thought a lot about, like, posed before in terms of like dinner guests and things like that. I know I've answered before, like Oprah. I think she'd be amazing to, I think she's a stellar interviewer and I love her kind of body of work. RBG is a big influence. My dad, who's passed away, I'd love to have him. But I actually kind of feel that my truest answer would be to have God on the island, and not to impose religion on anybody else. I think God comes in many different forms, but for me to have God at the island would be a little bit like that old question of, if you had a genie in lamp and had 3 wishes, what would you wish? And one of your wishes would be 3 more wishes. I kind of feel like God is that, like, besides, he would have all the answers of the universe, all the things that I was ever interested or curious about, or like it could be about the past, the present, or the future, because he knows all in my mind. So yeah, I think he would be amazing to. It would almost be like, please strand me on a desert island so I could, spend time with God physically there, kind of thing.
It is a fantastically interesting answer. And I'm curious that, because first of all, you've defined the sex of God in your answer as he. I mean, it was a given there. But presumably, if God is all people, as some doctrine would have us believe, then God at times would be a woman. God could manifest.
100% agree.
Yeah.
I don't think that I may use he because I probably grew up, but I would equally say, or would equally want to say she, or whatever. I don't think a gender needs to be applied.
No, I'm always interested in an answer like that, because I think whatever doctrines you were raised that characterize your perception of God. I have a friend of a friend who believes that God is every blade of grass, it's every bird you see, it's every spider's kneecap. I'm not sure spiders have kneecaps. I don't know, maybe they have 8. But God is everywhere, and the idea of an entity to her is ridiculous. But there is God in everything. I can't, that's an extraordinary answer. And it makes it difficult to sort of argue that there is no God, because you certainly couldn't prove or disprove any suggestion. There's life in all creatures, and if God is life, and so on and so forth. So your answer is fascinating to me. Would there be a manifestation where you say, God is going to appear to me? Is there a classic image that you say it would probably appear like this?
Yeah, so that's a really, really good question. So first of all, to me, God is love. Like, God is love, is love, is love, is love. And so there's no, I know religion, I'm not speaking about religion specifically. Religion often does get a bad rap, as deservedly so in a lot of cases. But for me, you're right. Like, I could sit here and speak to God in prayer, or just being mindful. So he is everywhere, or she is everywhere. But in the desert island situation, I was actually envisioning like a manifestation, like not just me sitting there kind of waxing poetic or whatever. It would be more of like, yeah, he's sitting at my side, or
brilliant.
she.
It's a fantastic answer. Or they. I don't even know the rules anymore. I guess
That's true. They is probably better. Yeah.
Yeah, there's probably it. Father, Son, Holy Spirit. It probably should have been that all the way along. But we never got around to looking. Great answer. I'm really intrigued by that. You know what? The trouble. I knew this would be a problem with us, Tanya. As soon as we said, "Well, Tanya Thompson," I knew we'd need more than half an hour. But I have to push on. So it's annoying because I'd like to spend more time on this. But let's assume that you've got God on the island, manifesting him, her, or their self in any which way. And they are able to play a game with you. Which game, not from childhood, which game that you've worked on, let's say, one of the ones that you've had responsibility for or a hand in, which of those toys or games would you say would be good to have on the island?
Okay, so that is okay, because I was originally thinking of like being there solo. So I was like, oh, Gravity Maze and Laser Maze I brought in at Think Fun. That would be an entertaining solo activity. But in terms of if I had God, or it wasn't a solo game, the ones that I've taken in, it would be amazing. I did a small stint on taking over some toy brands. So I brought in like Mr. Potato Head's Moving Lips, which I love, and Play-Doh. I did some Play-Doh stuff, Play-Doh Builder in particular. Can you imagine sitting there playing Play-Doh with God? That would be so awesome. And then and then in kind of like some fun, like kind of competitive things, Foosketball I brought in for Hasbro last year it launched. So it's a phenomenal game. It's like Foosketball meets basketball.
I actually have a copy downstairs, and I took one of the little people off there. I mean, for anybody that hasn't seen this is phenomenal. It's like a foosball, but you have the little chaps, the little characters pick up. I mean, that's just the coolest thing in the world. I'm absolutely loving it. Maybe I can shoot at the camera. Oh! It won't get better than that. And cut. That's great. Oh, I think it's terrific. And I got to tell you, I'm in love with this. It's a sensational game. Who's the inventor behind this?
Yeah, Ken Morton. So Ken, when I saw that idea, I was just like, this is the most innovative thing I've seen in this tabletop space. The fact that you can pick up balls and shoot a hoop with them is it's remarkable. So it's done really well this year. It just came out this year. So, and
I should explain that there's two players. There's one on either side, and these things are attached to a table, and there's a basketball court. It's not just me, hurling it at the thing. I've taken this off, but it's absolutely sensational. I love it. I think it's terrific. And I played it with my parents loved it. I played it with my neighbor's son. He loved it. That's much younger. It's a real crowd pleaser. So that's a great game to have on the island with two people. That's absolutely terrific. Are there any others that come to mind?
Well, so my first game, I was super proud to bring into Hasbro because I'd worked for specialty companies prior to that, Marbles, The Brain Store, Mastermind Toys. And so they were all kind of like Think Fun's motto is to make the world better thinkers when I was there. So it was kind of like coming to Hasbro, they were like, okay, you're very specialty and very brain kind of focused. Do you think you can, source mass market product? And I was like, yes, I'm delivering what companies that I work for want. You want something different, I can deliver it. It's not about me and my passion only. It's also about kind of what you need. And so they gave me a chance. They hired me. And my first product was with Don Allman and Bob Driscoll for Don't Step in It. So, which is a hilariously light-hearted, funny game of blindfolding yourself, walking across a grass mat and trying not to step in the Play-Doh poop piles along the way. So can you imagine playing that with God? That would be pretty awesome.
That would be. Well, gosh, presumably God would know where they were.
Yeah, it's true.
You'd have to ask them to play as though they did. But I didn't realize that Don't Step in It was your first with Hasbro,
Yeah.
which is, I mean, almost dare I suggest it shows off the muscle of not having to worry about thinking about thinking, because you could never accuse Don't Step in It. And I love the guys and I love the product, so I'm not knocking it when I say I don't think you could accuse that of having too much educational or intellectual value. It's just honest to goodness fun.
Yeah, exactly, which is what Hasbro is trying to do, is deliver incredible fun play experiences to families all over the world. So it is fun and laughter. And at the time in 2017, I think there was just a lot of lightheartedness needed in people's lives. And so it was one that just delivered and did really well. So
yeah. Well, I didn't realize that was your first, and presumably that hit home at Hasbro, and they just sort of said, "This is a delight. Tanya Thompson's a good hire."
Yeah, well, I'm just super thankful that the market responded so well, because we can kind of determine what we think is going to be a good game or might be on trend, but you don't really know. I actually sourced Think Fun's first escape room product, and that was before, of course, everybody knows escape rooms now, but nobody knew. There was like maybe one in San Francisco at the time, but when we had done some research around puzzles, we'd noticed that there was this rise happening, because San Francisco's was like booked way in advance. So we thought, can we do this in a box? So found a pair of inventors, the Blue Matter Games, and they delivered on the product. And then I left, but then when Think Fun launched it, there was two companies that were thinking the same thing. So 3 people launched escape rooms at the same time, which created a trend. You don't go in going, oh, this is going to be trendy. You never know until it hits. And Don't Step in It also kind of like was on the wings of a poop trend that was happening, believe it or not, that year. And so it was like one of these things that we just happened to hit it right at the right time.
I love that. On the wings of a poop trend.
Yep.
Possibly not a great name for a game, but certainly for a Paul McCartney album.
Certainly.
I don't know him. I'll have to find a way. Not that he'd be pleased to get a letter from me just saying that. That would be odd. So good. These are great answers. I've enjoyed this. We've got one more thing, I think, that would be pertinent to the plot, and that would be if you had an invention of somebody else's with you, so something that's nothing to do with you and something necessarily that you didn't play with and remember from childhood. But what would that be, that you have a toy or a game that you would like on the island to while away the time now that's nothing to do with you?
Yeah, so I am super passionate about games. This is my collection behind me, since we're all working from home these days, and it grows in many directions off camera that way. So this was a really interesting question about, like, I could be very specific and say, take Kablab, our new Hasbro party game, or I could take some of my favorites like Seven Wonders, or Augustus and Catan and others like that, Wingspan. But I was really thinking about what could be more versatile and basic. And my answer, I was like, I think I would take a deck of cards, because a deck of cards, which I had nothing obviously to do well before my time, is so versatile. You could play solitaire, you could play solo, you could play if you had another person that got stranded as well, and it could adjust to any situation, and is definitely repeatable and playable over and over again, because it's so versatile.
Yeah. It's a fantastic answer, actually, because it's so simple and so versatile. And look at the space it takes up. But I mean, a pack of cards, very few games manufactured are able to offer any kind of competition to that space play ratio in terms of what you can do with it. Yeah, it's a good answer. And you're right. Long before, I'm mercifully pleased to say, either of our times, I don't know what the oldest pack of cards in the world is, but that's got to be... Is it pre-Roman? I don't know. I'd have to look that up.
Yeah,
you think
yeah,
I'd know as a magician. Good answer. Good answer. All right, we got the last question then, Tanya. Oh, good, I've enjoyed this. I'm sorry we don't have longer. We should do a special director's cut, Bill. I'm talking to Bill like you can hear me. He's lurking in the background.
Bill,
I don't know if people know.
that's right. He's a lurker.
He is a lurker.
You've just outed him.
Oh, he's a funny man. You don't know his ways. So last question then, and it doesn't have to be morbid. I always worry when I say to people, I might ask this, and I do. I worry about the morbidity of it because it sounds like it's going to be immediately a negative thing. I really don't think it has to be. But if you thought you were never going to get off an island and you wanted to be remembered, you wanted a message, you wanted to sum up your life, you wanted an epitaph, any of those things, what would you leave either as a message in a bottle for people to find or spell out in stones? What sums it all up for you?
You know, I've never thought about an epitaph before. So I was like, yeah, it never came. What would I want to my gravestone to say? So I think a lifetime of play, laughter, and love is what I would want it to say, because that pretty much sums up myself in however many words that was.
1, 2, 3.
A lifetime of
7.
Yeah, 7.
Lifetime, 1 word. Yeah, 7. It's a great answer. It's a really great answer. It's terribly intriguing when you ask people this, because oddly enough, the experience I have is when you sort of say this to people, they have one of two very direct responses. What would you think about that? I've never given it any thought at all. Or they say, oh, I know it's exactly this, and they've got it down like they're expecting to be bumped off next week. And you think, why would you know that? What's going on with these people? But a lifetime of play, laughter, and love is a fantastic epitaph. I think that's absolutely terrific. And I don't think we're going to, Tanya, do better than that as a way to wrap up the interview. So I'm going to say you have been, as I suspected you would be, nothing but joy and insight. And I'm so grateful that you made the time. Thank you, Tanya.
Thanks, Deej. Thank you so much for the opportunity. I've enjoyed it myself. It's a lot of fun.